President Donald Trump is ramping up the pressure on Russian President Vladimir Putin to end the war in Ukraine. Just a short time ago, the president made the announcement after meeting with NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte in the Oval Office. Listen to what he said.
But we're very, very unhappy with him, and we're going to be doing very severe tariffs if we don't have a deal in 50 days. Tariffs at about 100%. You'd call them secondary tariffs. You know what that means. But today we're going to talk about something else. And as you know, we've spent $350 billion approximately on this war with Russia and Ukraine. And would like to see it end. It wasn't my war, it was Biden's war. It's not my war. I'm trying to get you out of it. And we want to see it end. And I'm disappointed.
Okay, let's bring back in CBS News White House reporter Olivia Rinaldi. And Olivia, what else do we know about this statement from the president?
Well, Muga, this seems to be the big statement that the president had teased last week, this big Russia announcement. He said there will be a 50% tariff on Russia if they don't come, or 100% tariff on Russia, excuse me, if they don't have peace with Ukraine in 50 days. That would be on September 1st. So that's what the president is announcing today, really ramping up the pressure on Russian President Vladimir Putin. The question, though, is will he respond to that pressure and come back to the negotiating table with the United States and Ukraine about how to end this war? We know that since there have been ongoing negotiations between the U.S. and Ukraine that started in the spring, Russia has significantly ramped up their attacks against Ukraine. Missile barrages nearly every night in Ukrainian cities. So it appears so far that that's what really spurred the president into action, because he's growing increasingly frustrated with Vladimir Putin. Now the question is, will he come back to the negotiating table with this new announcement?
And Olivia, can you tell us more about the weapons deal that was also announced during that meeting?
Of course. Well, the president was meeting with NATO Secretary General Rutte, and the announcement that was there today was that the U.S. would be sending Patriot missiles to NATO. And this is kind of complicated here. So the U.S. would be sending them to NATO, and then NATO would be able to send them to Ukraine. And this would be paid for by European countries. What this ends up doing is really having the president save face with some members of his Republican base who have said no more weapons to Ukraine. Though on one hand, the president is getting increasingly frustrated with Putin. So this allows him to send weapons to Ukraine through NATO as kind of an intermediary, and it will be paid for by European countries. So that's what the president announced today. He said the United States will not have any payment made as a result of it. We're not buying it, but we will manufacture the weapons that will be sent over to Ukraine for them to use on the battlefield.
Yeah, Olivia, I also want to go back to the sanctions and the additional secondary tariff that the president potentially mentioned there, because we know lawmakers are working on the 500% tariff, but the president is saying he might just stick to 100. Can you tell us more about that?
Right, so the Senate is kind of working on this sanctions bill that has 85 co-sponsors. It's a rare show of bipartisan force from the U.S. Senate, and it would impose a 500% tariff on Russian imports of uranium, of oil, of gas. So what that does is really constrict them on the global stage from selling their oil that allows them to fund the war in Ukraine. The president said these 100% secondary tariffs essentially would also do something similar to that in restricting Russia and imposing more sanctions on them. But the president was asked if he needs it to be 500% like the Senate, and he said, I mean, 500 is sort of meaningless after a while because it does the same thing as the 100% tariff. So the president said he'll be meeting with Republican leader John Thune today here at the White House to discuss this bill, to discuss what these sanctions would look like going forward. But the president said ultimately he's pleased with what Congress is doing. It's just a matter of whether or not he needs it at this moment.
And so, Olivia, just a clarification here. That bill, we know lawmakers are still working through it right now. Nothing official just yet, but the president is saying that his idea is just to stick with 100. Is that correct? What I just
That's
okay.
essentially it. Yeah. So they are working on this, and it's kind of working on the same track towards the same goal, but the number is just different. But the president said it's there for him if he needs it. He's just not quite sure yet if he needs it to be 500%, or if the 100% he feels like is going to accomplish what he wants it to.
I see there. So the number, it remains in question, but it does seem like the president and lawmakers seem to be on the same page when it comes to secondary tariffs or additional sanctions against Russia. Olivia Rinaldi at the White House for us today. Thank you so much for your time. Appreciate it.